want to go ahead and get started. So yeah, today's webinar is the next in the ProNovos Construction Analytics series, is actually on a topic I'm really excited to discuss today, which is key metrics for construction executives. Just a couple quick housekeeping items before we start diving in here. The poll questions, kind of like the one that we have up right now, those are actually going to pop up throughout the webinar today. So please do your best to answer those as they come. Just because what that does is kind of helps Brian and myself to steer the conversation towards what's going to be most relevant for the people who are attending today. You also see down there at the bottom of your Zoom that there's an area for you to ask questions as we go throughout this. Just in this interest of everybody's time, we are probably going to save all those until the very end. Now, if you've got a hard stop at the top of the hour and we end up going long, or you're just not able to stay for the whole time today, that's okay. As you guys probably saw when you logged in, this webinar is going to be recorded. So if you do have to jump before we have a chance to get to your question, we'll be sure to follow up with you. And there's also going to be a recording of this that is sent out immediately afterwards. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in here. So quick introductions here. My name is Brennan Medford. I'm one of the directors here at ProNovos. I've spent really my whole career over the last 12 plus years working for big data analytics and workflow automation providers in the tech space. But I've spent probably the last 5 years or so in construction technology specifically. Before I started working at ProNovos, I worked at Procore for a few years, and I've been at ProNovos for coming up on 3 years. Now, quick plug for those of you who are not familiar with ProNovos. We are a SaaS company that works exclusively with commercial general contractors and specialty contractors. And our mission is really to provide our clients with data-driven insights to improve profit margins and other KPIs through a simple and integrated cloud-based solution. Now, joining me today, I'm really excited to introduce Brian Muncy, who's really just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to construction financial management. But Brian, I'll let you introduce yourself real quick, man.
Sure. Thanks, Brennan, and thanks for everybody for attending today. My name is Brian Muncy. I'm with CBIZ-Somerset. For some of you that may be not familiar with that, Somerset recently merged in with CBIZ. So we're happy to be a part of the CBIZ family. Myself, I've been in public accounting for 25 years or so. Spent about 20 years of that dealing with construction contractors, similar to kind of what Brennan was saying as far as the types. Our firm and what I've dealt with has been your small specialty sub from a $2 to $5 million contractor all the way up to some larger general contractors that range in the $400 to $500 million range of size. So pretty wide gamut of contractors that we've seen, but we handle all that wide array and kind of work in this space with KPIs and performance management with our contractors. So I'm excited to talk with Brennan today about this topic and how we can provide you guys some guidance related to that.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So just to kind of kick things off, I think most people here have probably heard the term KPI, but just to kind of set the stage in terms of what we're going to be talking about specifically today. What is a KPI? It's a key performance indicator, and what that means is something that is a quantifiable measure of performance over time for a very specific objective. So what that really involves is not only capturing the data, but then I think more importantly, converting that into something that is a useful metric that ultimately gives people insights and the ability to not only change behavior, but hopefully affect the project outcomes on each one of your jobs. Now, I think more important than what a KPI is understanding sort of why that's something that is really important to track. So much of what is tracked in construction is really looking at just a single snapshot in time. I think that looking at things and measuring the progress over an extended period is really where KPIs end up becoming a lot more valuable. I'm sure one thing that just about every contractor would agree with is that the one thing that's inevitable on projects is that you're going to have issues and delays that come up. And I think that when you start to look at things over an extended period, that's really where executives are able to take a step back and helps leader understand not just what's happening in a microcosm, but really how things are affecting the performance of a company over the long haul. The second thing here, I think it's also about improving performance and efficiency over periods of time. And this is a concept that I think, most business schools would talk to you about, but, it kind of comes down to this idea that you really can't optimize or improve what you're not measuring in the first place. And if you're not measuring something, then you need to start with the tracking aspect of it, which is a lot of times what a lot of those ERP and project management systems allow you to do. But that really is a sequential path that you have to go through in order to really have any hope of trying to optimize or improve performance. And the last one here is just trying to make better and more informed decisions on projects. It seems like there's a big trend right now where everybody's trying to kind of nail down what those KPIs are that they should be tracking, which is something we're going to get to here momentarily. But tracking KPIs just for the sake of tracking them is really just adding another task to people's plate and just creating administrative burdens, right? So the information that you're tracking, it should have that ultimate goal of changing behavior and improving the outcomes that you see on projects. But Brian, I'm curious, when you've had those conversations with some of your construction clients in your practice, what are some of the reasons that they kind of decide to go down this journey of trying to implement a more cohesive KPI strategy?
Yeah, so the main thing there is to provide guidance or expectations, right? So getting those tasks and processes that are important, that are going to drive the results. So basically what you're doing is you're outlining the path for that, project manager or superintendent or whoever you're developing that KPI for. You're kind of giving them the path of what they should focus on to drive those results. Because kind of how you've got it here, and maybe go ahead and flip to the next slide there, Brennan. One of the challenges when we get to implementing KPIs is everybody gets burdened on thinking I've got all these different things that I want to measure, and all these different tasks, and plus I've got to do my own job that I do on a daily basis. And one of the concepts we kind of throw out is, Pareto's law, where try to find those 20% of processes that are going to drive 80% of your results. So try to find those key things in your business that are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. So kind of just trying to focus in on that. And kind of one of the things we have here is, we've got this pennant here where we talk about, when we talk about KPIs, you're going to set your vision, mission, value. So you're going to, start at the top and kind of figure out where you want the company to go, how you're going to achieve that. And then you kind of define your critical success factors, which are, what are those key business areas that you must get right? And those are the things that are going to drive the results. And then from there, you can develop what we call your KPIs, which are going to be those process-driven items that are going to help you and getting the results all the way up the chain as we kind of went through. So that's kind of just a hierarchy level of that. But it can be challenging there, but to define what those are, but that's where you just need to find those key ones that are going to drive the best results rather than trying to overwhelm yourself with trying to, look in every single area. Because when you look at it, if we're doing our critical success factors correctly, we're spreading those different achievable things across different areas of the business. So you as a, in your area may not have to do every single item, but, if you're doing your part, it's going to contribute up. And I know one other thing that we've got here is, the administrative effort and manual tracking. One of the things that we do in the performance management systems that we develop is we want to try to make them as simplistic as possible. So on a monthly basis, whenever you're tracking those KPIs, that it really only takes you a half an hour to go through and say yes or no, did you do those things to your measurables. And so trying to, a lot of the work is done in designing the system. And so one analogy we often use in the construction side is, if you think about building a building, it's like, you've got all these contractors that are doing the different types of things. They're putting the concrete in, they're putting the structure in, they're putting the drywall, all those things. But what we ultimately want to do is be that tenant or business or the building owner. We just want to be able to go in there and flip the light switch and be able to walk in and make everything work. So if we have the system designed right, then we should be able to do that. If we don't, then maybe we need to look at opportunities to improve that. So Brennan, I don't know if you have any other items to add on that particular item.
Yeah, no, I think those are all great points, Brian. You know, most of the contractors that I talk to, that seems to be one of the biggest things that kind of hinders them from really starting to even track KPIs is that one, you know, if you go through and Google KPIs that I should be tracking, there's going to be enough things to make your head spin, right? But usually there's a few really key ones that are going to align with those specific goals, that if you can get a better handle on those, you know, call them 5 to 10 different KPIs that are really going to move the needle, those are the things that are going to produce the positive outcomes that people are looking for. The second piece, I think, is that, you know, to your point, the manual administrative effort just to set up the systems that are necessary to track those in real time. You know, it usually ends up reverting back to something like Excel, which if you're expecting people on your team to go and actually improve their project performance, but they're having to spend hours a day just manually keying in information and trying to export information from this system and merge it with another one that they're using, you know, there's only so many hours in a day. So I think leveraging technology to do that heavy lifting is really what's going to allow you to not only see those KPIs, but hopefully see them start to trend in the right direction, which I think is the reason people want to start measuring them in the first place, right?
Yep. So kind of what we have next here are common KPIs that we see at a high level. So we've got margin, tracking income, net capital. We have days sales outstanding, overbillings to cash and AR, and then backlog. One thing we want to kind of mention with these, a lot of these are what we would call lagging indicators. And what we mean there is their results, right? So the activities and everything have kind of already happened, and we really can't influence these things. So they're the measurables and they're the lagging measurables. Yeah. And so a lot of times what we get into whenever we get into talking about KPIs, and it's kind of one of the secret things of the processes that we put in whenever we do performance management, is what are those leading, you know, tasks, those non-financial qualitative tasks that are going to drive the results that you want in those lagging measurables. Because what we often see is that, you know, you'll have a strategic plan and you'll say, I want to have 15% margins, I want to have X dollars in revenue. But then you don't go down to that next layer and say, hey, how am I going to do that? And what processes do I need to do to achieve that? Brennan, do you want to go through maybe an example here we've got maybe on the production rate side?
Yeah, in fact, while we're on this, I think that we did just have another poll question come up about what are some of the more common KPIs that people in the audience are tracking here. So yeah, excited to see what people come up with right here. So we'll give people a few minutes to respond to that one real quick. Yeah, if you just want to drop those answers in the chat window, we can go ahead and record those and we'll send that out in the survey afterwards here. Cool. All right. Well, Brian, I know we're at about the halftime mark here. I'm sure people are eager to kind of see how some of this stuff would actually operate in practice in terms of implementing a system that can, again, kind of do some of that heavy lifting to not only measure, but start optimizing some of the KPIs, whatever it is that's relevant to them. So give me 1 sec. I'm actually going to switch over here and show you from the ProNovos side how we help contractors to measure a lot of this. All right. Quick check here. Brian, can you see the ProNovos application real quick here?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So again, as you all probably know, there are a lot of different tools out there that are often used to provide analytics and to help measure and optimize some of the KPIs that are going to sort of align with those goals and objectives that are unique to your company. And one of the things that ProNovos does to kind of help streamline that process is really just by making the syncing of all the different programs that contractors use today really seamless. And what that ultimately allows them to do is to have instantaneous access within about 2 days to an entire analytics marketplace that I think, a lot of those examples that you talked about, Brian, are already pre-populated, right? I think that, again, every contractor is going to have sort of that 80-20 rule, right? Where most everybody's going to be looking at things like their over under billings, their work in progress, how efficient they are at tracking change orders, and a lot of the other things we've talked about so far. But I think oftentimes people get so hung up in just trying to get a single dashboard or view created to help disseminate that information that it just becomes one of those things that gets put on the back burner and never ends up really coming to fruition, right?
I think another thing just to add is a lot of times you'll be in a meeting where you just have static information. So you may not be able to drill down dynamically to find that information. So it has to be a circle back and spend more time later to go through it when everybody's not in the room to disseminate that information. So something like what we're looking at here, where we can drill down to the underlying data, sometimes that can help. Just from an efficiency standpoint, you can alleviate some of your questions really quickly versus having to, come back to them or have task lists that then you have to review the next meeting or go back over after the meeting and things like that. So I think that's another opportunity in using something like a tool like ProNovos Analytic Marketplace.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point, Brian, because oftentimes what we see is that before contractors have a true analytics solution in place, that they're relying completely on just an export from their controller, something that came from the accounting system or whatever system they're using today. And what we're also starting to see as a pretty common trend is that there's dozens of new construction applications that are coming up that all have kind of different use cases for different departments. But what that ends up doing is kind of siloing information into all these separate databases that make it really challenging, I think, for executives to get one complete picture of what's going on across all those different departments, right? So this is just one example of what that could look like. With our executive dashboard, you can see you got everything from your gross profit year to date, gross margin, you got payroll information, how many active employees you have, a breakdown of your headcount by different departments. But to your point, Brian, I think that's also one of the big values of leveraging a business intelligence or analytics platform in order to really kind of uncover some of those nuggets that are going to allow you to improve those project outcomes, which is that drill path capability, right? So like if you were to ask your controller to just send you a report that showed all of your outstanding AR and what that aging report looked like, you might get something that's similar to this. But if you really want to drill down to the root cause of those issues, that's going to be a whole nother task that you have to go and wait and ask them to do. So the ability to kind of drill down to that invoice level detail, I think, is really where you're able to affect the outcome, as opposed to just seeing a raw number and not really knowing what it is that you can do about it, right? Now, Brian, I realize this is one of our demo accounts here, but I'm curious, is if you were to look at this and you were kind of consulting with one of your construction CFOs or presidents, is there anything here that really kind of sticks out to you that you would want to drill down on?
Well, there's two things that kind of stick out. One is, your over 90 days is getting pretty heavy. So maybe something like that and drilling down there, which you have that capability there. Plus, just noticing that, our overall cash balance is at a negative at the end of this month, and kind of wondering maybe why, when we typically, have a positive balance in our cash, or normally in our cash activity for the month, right? So our activity for this month is negative, and maybe wondering why negative for this particular month.
Yeah, and it's usually going to correspond to some things out of whack with your over under billings would kind of be my initial assumption there. So again, kind of coming back to to that concept of being able to take that macro level information and kind of drill in more specifically to what's leading to this negative cash balance for the month. You can look at something like a company monthly billings report, right? So what this would show you is for the month, all the products that you have costs for, how many products have been billed, what the total costs are for this month, and those total billings. But I think relative to what you would get from just an export from Sage or Foundation or whatever ERP system you might be using, taking just those raw rows and columns of data that don't really give you a lot of digestible information, the right types of solutions can actually help you to pinpoint where some of those problems might be occurring from, right? So you've got down here all the percent of projects that are billed broken out by the different project managers. So if you look for some of the outliers here, I'm going to pick on Paul here, but it looks like he's got 12 projects at this point that still have not been billed. So then what this will then show you is all the products that do have missing billings and what was expected to be billed for that exact month. Brian, again, that's my interpretation of it. What would you kind of highlight if you were going through something like this with one of your construction executives?
Yeah, no, I think I agree. Over there on the right there at the monthly net billings over cost there, you can see where Paul kind of stands out there, which you just pointed where, his is in that gold color. So his, billings aren't matching up with his cost. And then, like you said, I like this graphic where it's got the percent of projects billed, because I can really quickly not just look at, an analytic to say I'm over or under billed. I can really drill down to that project manager, and I can drill down to the specific, jobs related to that real quick to see what's going on there.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And I think, again, just coming back to that drill path concept that we're talking about, I think as important as it is for construction executives to be keeping an eye on this information and ensuring that it is all presented in real time and not based on a snapshot that came from a report that was produced a week or last month. I think that it's important to also disseminate that data across the organization to the people who actually have the ability to impact that change, right? So if we wanted to drill in on one of those projects that Paul was actually responsible for, this is an example of a dashboard that provides all the KPIs that the actual project manager would be able to have access to, right? So within this one, what they'd be able to see instantaneously, and again, this is all syncing with the ERP system on a daily basis, but it'll give them all the high-level project financials on their job. It'll tell them whether or not they billed this month, what percent billed they actually are, and then some other really interesting things like their average days to pay, right? Some other cool graphics around kind of how their monthly billings have been progressing month over month throughout the course of construction. But then this one down here, this one seems to be a huge winner for a lot of those project teams, because we've actually worked with a lot of clients to kind of circle back to your point, Brian, about trying to align this to their actual goals. Who, especially coming into, I don't know if you consider that we're already in a recession or maybe one's on the horizon there, but regardless of your perspective on that, I think every contractor is trying to keep an eye on their cash flow. So a contractor that we worked with recently and in Brian's neck of the woods, that was one of his big goals, was to try and improve his cash position. And I think that the challenge that he saw was that his project managers really had a hard time kind of understanding the relationship between the costs that they're incurring on projects, what they've actually billed, and then the cash that they've received for it, right? So Brian, I don't know if you have any thoughts or commentary on this one, or if you've seen that with a lot of your clients.
No.
It seems like the whole concept of over/under billings, I think a lot of project managers understand it in theory, but when it comes to actually making sure that those are kept in line as they get towards the end of a project, it seems like that's just a tough one for a lot of PMs and field managers to wrap their head around.
Yeah, one of the things we talk about a lot of times is like the sharing of information between accounting and your project managers, right? And what information do they get? And to your point, you were saying like the project managers kind of know that they're billing ahead or that they have overbillings. But one of the questions sometimes comes in of, are they billing ahead enough, right? Or how is that overbilling contributing to our cash flow position. So one of the things I really like about this graph is you can see with the black line there is our cost tracking on a monthly basis. And then the green line is our cash position of collection off of our billing. So you can kind of see there that, from September, whenever we did start incurring costs and got our first receipt, all the way until, let's say August of 22. So we went almost an entire year and we were cash flow negative really on that job, as far as just looking at it from our cost perspective, not even looking about it from our profit. So I think this is just valuable information for that project manager if they get that in, maybe in real time, or get it a little bit more frequently, and layering that cash over that as what the receipts are. They will know maybe more readily if they're billing ahead enough to help in your cash flow position. Because if you think about it, if you just look at, various jobs, and there's, a handful of jobs where you're cash negative, if they know that ahead of time and they can help plan for that, that's just going to increase your cash flow, increase your working capital, just give you opportunities to maybe get out of your line of credit. There's all kinds of different things that can contribute to the company and help with strength and the health of the company.
Yeah. No, I think that is huge. And I think oftentimes, what we hear is that most project managers don't really get any sort of visibility to this type of information until that monthly job review meeting, right? But if you're looking at your average days to pay, and looks like on this project they're averaging about 60, but it looks like for this last month here we're already at close to 140 days where these payments are overdue. And if you're waiting another 30 days before the PM's even made aware of that, we're just going to see this problem get exacerbated pretty substantially, right?
Hey, Brennan, I think we can probably go into maybe a couple questions that are down in the chat or the Q&A. One of them asks, how is ProNovos different from Power BI? So maybe that's one you can address.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I would say probably the biggest difference that you would see is that, one, as soon as you integrate your ERP system directly into ProNovos, which takes less than 5 minutes to do, and within less than 48 hours, all of your project information from whatever system we're syncing with is going to be readily available. Will automatically populate all of these dashboards. If anybody's ever toyed around with Power BI, it is a very powerful tool, no pun intended, but it does basically come as a blank slate. So what we've seen a lot of times with clients who have tried to go down that road because they get enticed by the quote unquote free license that if you're a big Microsoft shop, they'll usually provide to you, is that it just becomes one of those things where, again, they don't really know where to start. And even if this doesn't necessarily address every single KPI that you have, because this is designed specifically for commercial builders, it's already going to have probably 80% of the metrics and KPIs that most construction executives and their teams are really looking to get insight to. So I think it just comes down to that time to value. Whereas with Power BI, you probably either need to have a in-house developer or some IT manager who has the bandwidth to be able to develop something like this, or you got to go out and hire a consultant, which is looking at the 3 to 6 month process a lot of times. The other big differentiator I would say between ProNovos and a more off-the-shelf solution like a Power BI or a Tableau is that you actually have the ability to go through and use inputs to actually create sort of a sandbox account where, what we have right here is our projected final cost tool, which is something that project managers can use to do all of their job cost forecasting. And again, instead of just looking at a static snapshot like Power BI, which is just going to be simply an extraction, reading information from whatever system it's sourced from, this actually gives you the ability to go through and to make budget adjustments based on the cost code structure that you already have. So I think it's less so about just simply seeing the information and being able to interactively kind of play with it and identify different types of what if scenarios, right? If I were to in this example change my cost to complete hours for this labor cost code from 252 to 260, what is that going to do to my overall profit margin on the job, right? And I think that a lot of times PMs don't have direct access to the accounting system, or if they don't, then they're usually having to export this to Excel, and there's a whole lot of pivot tables and VLOOKUPs that they have to do to kind of be able to ingest and kind of get to those answers. Whereas right here, it's all just kind of tracked for you, so you can play around with different types of scenarios and understand how you may need to shift budgets around to hit your estimated targets.
Hey, Brennan, I want to take, we're at 1:32, so we're a little over, I think, right, already. I know since we may have some people dropping, we'll stay on here and we can probably go through maybe one or two of these other questions that are in the Q&A. But I just want to say thanks for everyone for attending today. The topic is key metrics for executives. And one of the takeaways, I mean, we've kind of shown you a couple of different things. A lot of these, when you look at performance management, keep in mind, you're trying to find those key tasks that are going to give you the best results. You're going to need something to give you those lagging indicators, which is kind of where we're talking about with this analytic marketplace. But also the big thing is to make you a better contractor and best in class is looking at those process things that are going to, help you achieve those results, right? So I know that's one thing that we focus in on whenever we put together these performance management systems that we've been helping contractors with for over 15 years, is kind of helping them with that process-driven methodology. So I just want to, go back to that. You've got your leading and your lagging. Both of them are important and provide different information. But appreciate you attending today, and just wanted to kind of summarize that. I don't know, Brennan, if you have anything else to kind of summarize before we maybe answer one or two of these other questions.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it there, Brian. At the end of the day, I don't think that there is a single technology platform that is going to, eliminate all cost overruns or schedule delays or any of the other issues that you're having on projects. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a system that allows you to track those key performance indicators in real time, sort of get that baseline measurement of performance, then expecting your project teams to improve those when they don't have a clear understanding of where they stand at any point on the job, I think that that's a recipe for failure. So if anybody would like to learn more about ProNovos, we'll be sure to include our information in the follow-ups along with the recording of this. And just as a plug for the next webinar that we have in this series, we do have another one that's coming up on March 1st, which is going to be more focused on cash flow forecasting, which is a new module that we're just now releasing that we're really excited for. So for any of the CFOs, controllers, or executives who are really trying to get a better handle on their cash flow forecasting, I think this is going to be a really exciting one to present and discuss with you guys. So thank you again, everybody, for the time, and we look forward to meeting with you soon.
Thank you.